you later, Navigator.
Oh my God.
Short and sweet.
That is what I kept on hearing throughout the entire movie. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
Compliance.
compliance.
My God.
Compliance.
Welcome, everybody, to Science Fiction Remnant. I am your host, Space Robert.
And your host, Space Captain Chaos.
And I am your host, Space Ray from Space Australia.
Your voice.
I wonder if people got confused all of a sudden.
No more than usual. Come on.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's how Chewbacca will talk if you learn how to talk.
Oh,
Nobody call him.
You know, I don't know. That makes sense in a weird way. Okay, so
Space Chewbacca.
Space Chewbacca. So let's start this space episode.
In case you're wondering why we're putting space in front of everything, it's because it makes it cooler.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the This Is Sci-Fi section. So it's going to make sense.
Oh, you think?
Maybe.
That's very brave of you.
Hey, so a space math scientist. Do we have
A space question? Yes. The space question this week is the same space question I ask every week: is what have you been space watching?
What will you do if your girl asks you to give her some space?
You put her in Elon Musk's rocket.
Get it a bigger thing.
No, that's other space. That's other space.
Yeah. Don't go there. Don't go near there.
I
She asked me for space. I became an astronaut.
I would have to say, I do apologize because I am watching anime.
I thought you were Robert.
And and I'm still watching Star Trek. I'm not complaining.
My wife is cool.
I have-
She wants to Star Trek with me. I'm so cool. Keep on rolling it, bro.
Well,
One of these wives is not like the others. One of these wives is not the same.
What am I supposed to say?
Oh, look, we're all just
Doing okay. And that's
supremely jealous.
Okay, so I guess we should ask our resident chaos bringer here, our Captain Chaos. What have you been watching sci-fi related?
Sci-fi related. I think I rewatched this week again Inception.
Oh, nice.
And I started another movie yesterday.
Not Tenet, is it?
I'm watching another this one. It's not like sci-fi. Sci-fi is like, well, you could say sci-fi, but it's more like Tom Clancy kind of concentrated. It's about soldiers that they made some experiments on them, and the whole platoon died, but this guy, which is Chris Pratt, and he's like a super soldier. They put a hit on him and kill his family, and he's going to get them all.
Interesting.
Yeah, looks cool. I've been watching that one. But like besides that, no, I cannot recall anything else.
Hmm.
2 days, which I was 2 years old.
Wow. How about our resident space math scientist?
Well, I was asked to watch this Disney movie about space. Well, sort of about space. And I watched that Disney movie about space, and then I watched a good Disney movie about space called The Black Hole.
Yes.
because I wanted to clear my palate.
Yeah, we're definitely doing that one. That is that is a really good.
You had too much cheesiness. I don't know what movie.
Yeah, I had to cleanse the palate from all the cheese.
Oh, nice.
Don't get me wrong, listeners. I don't hate this movie. I just like panning it.
It's just Jessica Parker.
Oh, you too.
Looks sick.
I got to say that was one of the highlights.
What?
So you didn't like a Space Pee Wee Herman?
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
Sarah Jessica Parker as an 18 or 19-year-old hitting on a 12-year-old. I thought that was impressive.
Yeah. I thought of that.
Showtime.
well, to be fair, he was probably older than she was.
Technically, no. It
Supposedly.
was 4 hours out.
I don't know. It's depends on what where you look at it. If you look at when he was born, then yes, he was older than she.
Theoretically.
Those balls, you have hair, bro.
Okay, so with that being said, should we move on to the next segment? We are Science Fiction Remnant.
This is the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
We are the Caribbean Science Fiction Network.
We are Monorats.
We are One Accord Level 2 Podcast.
This is Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and Open Pike Night.
This is Sci-fi.
Robert,
Yes.
they know the drill.
They do?
Sorry, who are you talking to? That's Space Robert.
Space Robert.
Get it right, man. Space Robert. So if this is your very first episode that you listen to, this segment is where we feature This is Sci-Fi. And this is a hashtag that we have adopted to help in the discovery of sci-fi. So if you are a sci-fi creator or if you are a sci-fi lover, you want to share and you want to follow that hashtag because as a fan, you have that one sci-fi love that you love talking about it, right?
Yeah.
In some cases, you might not have a person near or close to you that you can actually talk about that one sci-fi love that you have, or you could. But this gives you the avenue where you can go in and share that love, share that passion to people that like that stuff you do like, which in that case is a great way to have a conversation with like-minded individuals that like the same thing that you do. But the thing that I like the most about that hashtag is the fact that there are people that might not have otherwise been exposed to that thing you like, and listening, or in this case, engaging in that conversation, and getting the first-hand perspective of someone that loves that has passion about that one thing, would actually give them not only interested in the way that, okay, I'm curious, these people have a lot of passion about this one thing. I want to see what this is all about. But if it's coming from, like, for example, my perspective, when I finish that one sci-fi that I'm watching and I ran out of stuff to watch, it also gives me that discovery factor. Oh, I haven't watched that. Oh, I heard about that one and haven't gotten around to watch it. Hashtag make Robert watch 515.
The discovery factor.
So, you'll be curious about, and we might have another fan. And if you look at it from the perspective of the creator, You have that one love, that one thing that you created. It's your baby, and you want to share it to the world. Well, this is perfect because if you follow This Is Sci-Fi hashtag, you follow it because of that, because of the discovery factor, because you're looking for that one thing, and you're looking for the conversation, you're looking for the engagement. So this is the reason why we, in every episode, we talk about our hashtag, This Is Sci-Fi, and our experience for that week under that hashtag.
And under the drill that you know.
Mm-hmm. So we have had a lot of conversations, and I think I'm going to defer for this episode to our Captain Chaos and Mad Scientist, because the topics they're going to bring for this section are topics that I have been very well engaged in, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's just a blast. If you hear the show, if you hear us and you listen to the show long enough, you know that I have a big passion for sci-fi. So whenever there's a new thing, I'm all for it, and the conversation is amazing. So who wants to start first?
Well, pretty short on this week actually. We had actually, let me see, I wrote it here. The podcast that wouldn't die. They did an interesting post about the movie The Repo Man.
Oh yes,
That was a fun conversation.
we have to
Wanted
do
give
that
my
one.
shout out for that. We have to do it, man.
Yeah, Captain Chaos
Good
wants us to cover that movie, so we eventually will do it.
Which movie was it? Sorry.
Repo Man.
Repo Man.
Okay.
It's a classic.
Yeah, they're gonna, you pay for your heart, and if you don't pay it, the Repo Man comes and get it.
Yep.
That's
Simple.
Yeah, very simple.
And then you're a heartless bastard.
There you go. Exactly. Literally.
Speaking of literal things, we had a very interesting conversation around our Space Truckers announcement this week, where Robert started talking about the space cyborg around space truckers, and then I happened to mention put space in front of anything and it makes it better, except for even space toilet. Just don't think about how it works. And yeah, I mean, we cover in the space truckers episode, we covered about space eating. And then in the post we covered about space waste removal. Yeah, so it was very spacey.
Oh yeah, so I guess that would be our challenge to our listeners right now, because if you follow that conversation, I actually got to the point where I said, like, someone stop me. I got a space trigger happy. So
he spaced out on us.
How do you call? How a joke? How do you call a person that masturbates on an airplane?
I'm afraid to ask.
What do you call that?
Enlighten us. I don't know.
A person masturbating on an airplane.
Go ahead, shoot.
A hijacker.
Where's that pum sound?
You should have it on your little sound effects page.
I get myself
Space Robert. You should be space organized and have it on your space pad.
Man.
Maybe this one will work.
Yeah, I'll pay that.
Oh, I found it. I think I found it. There you go.
There it is. I knew you'd have it there somewhere.
So yeah, it was a fun conversation. So my challenge to you guys is, let's see how many things you could put space in front of
and make it cooler.
And I guess whoever makes something that doesn't sound cool loses. How about that?
Space
spectacular.
Oh, nice. Okay, so let's go in to our next segment.
Shoutouts.
Shout out. If there was an animation of what happens to shout out, it's like I'm behind the scenes. The robot just put me from behind the freaking theater. Like, go. Fuck.
That is a cool thing. We should have an animator, you know.
Well, first of all, I want to remember everybody that we're part of the Blind Knowledge Network. Go to www.blindknowledge.com. They have a good variety of content creators. I suggest everybody to go check them out. First shout out. Actually, we're gonna go to our dear Kelly Szentgyorgyi, and you can find her tag on Twitter at Antiportal. A conversation about space progress. Actually,
She's our regular.
excellent engagement.
Our regular.
Yeah, this one doesn't have a reference rubber. This one just a call out. Dear Nikky, go and check her out at the Nikky with KY162. Great podcast. We love you. We miss you, Nikky.
If you're an adult.
Yes, thank you, bro. Good take.
If you're an adult.
And you want to feel very young again.
That was a space save.
It's a sex space. Yes. Oh my god, great. And last one on the list, as for the constant support, sharing the retweets and the fantastic conversations to Robo Pulp. Go and check
Yes.
him out, Robo Pulp on Twitter.
And remember that comic. And it's
Yep.
if you hear our
It
previous
looks awesome,
episode,
bro.
yeah, we have a link for on our previous episode. So you should go
So
ahead.
another reason for everybody that is to go and check them out. Go and check all of our great supporters and collaborators. And that's for today.
Awesome. And I just want to bring up early that if you follow if you're not a member of our newsletter, you should actually go to our website, sciencefictionremnant.com.
You're missing out.
The articles come out every Sunday morning. That's Eastern time. And if you are not in the newsletter, you might not be aware that the article is out. So I suggest go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter. The articles comes out every Sunday, and this article that came out at the time of this recording, it was a fun thought experiment where I actually explored time travel, what happens to, say, a couple that travels back 100, 500, 1,000, and 1,000,000 years into the future. So it was a fun thought experiment for me. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I did writing it. So it's
That was fun.
sciencefictionremnant.com, and you click on the blog in the menu, and you can find all the articles that have come out so far. There are a couple more that I have on queue ready to release. So just make sure you subscribe to our newsletter.
Go ahead, everybody. Do it. And if you want to see a cool tattoo, can be on YouTube first of all. You can read what's on the screen right now. Right, guys?
Oh, yes. If you are not subscribed, if you're listening to this on the pod or watching this a month later and have not subscribed, you want to subscribe for one reason. First is you don't want to miss future episodes. Number two.
In general, with the studies of what we're doing on our account, shout out to our Filipino community.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the support.
And we're actually ranking very high on Thailand. So thank you very much in Thailand for making us your favorite sci-fi. We really, really appreciate it. And going back to the YouTube, if we get 10,000 subscribers, you can make Captain Chaos but your canvas. What? There's nothing better than that.
Yeah.
So help by subscribing and sharing the channel where other people can also subscribe. If you
I
know,
think I trust it too much that people don't get the agreement.
Oh, awesome. And for all of you that don't know, we do record a pre-show. And if you want to be in it, if you want to watch that pre-show, you want to become a Patreon. So not only are you helping the show, but you're on the in. And we take, suggestions. So if you are one of our Patreons, we really appreciate it. Number one. Number two, just reach out with ideas that you want to see on our Patreon channel, and we could probably make it happen for you. If you want to help out the show in other ways, you can buy us a coffee. We're actually at Buy Me a Coffee.
I want milk for me, please.
So thank you so much. And of course, for all the episodes that you have listened to on this show, as well as every article that we have written on our website, sciencefictionremnant.com, you can join us on Discord and let's have a conversation. For the articles, for example, we have a dedicated section where you have a link directly to the article, and we can start a conversation about that particular article just below it. And the general server has a section for every sci-fi IP there is. So if you have that one love that you want to talk about, you want to join our Discord, find that channel. You basically want to go to the roles and select your sci-fi flavor. That's going to turn on the channels for you. And just join in that channel and let's talk. Let's talk sci-fi. So go ahead and join our Discord and let's continue the sci-fi conversation.
Hey, how come we don't have Tyonageans?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe when we get our 10,000 subscribers, we can place the link so you guys can go and find only Gians. What do you think, Gio?
He's space posing.
For all of you out there that are actually listening to our pod and not watching the video, which comes about 30 days later, we have our very own Captain Chaos space posing.
Space hole. I'm a space gold digger. I warn you.
He must have a lot of space fans.
It's hot. So
of course, fans don't do anything in space because there's no atmosphere to push around.
Exactly.
No, but you're fresh. You move the air around. It creates a breeze. Right?
What air?
The one that you're breathing.
This is my comment. What air? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about inside of a capsule contained.
Oh, okay, right.
Well, I have an idea. You can bring a fan to space.
Yeah.
And then bring a tank of air with you, and then turn the fan on, which I hope is
you can just turn the tank of air
and then turn it exactly, and then open the air
valve,
the valve of the tank, and let the air out into the fan.
Mm-hmm.
That would be interesting.
That's going to make so much difference.
Imagine space races of like people riding tanks like horses or like brooms. And then they just like you with a hammer on the bottom and then they hold it like rings.
Space Harry Potter. playing space Quidditch. Hey, when are we doing Harry Potter? Because isn't that science fiction?
Okay, so I guess we should come up with a new segment called This Week on Science Fiction Tangent.
It's gonna be called Science Fiction Fantasyland.
We actually were exploring
Science
that.
fiction adjacent.
Yeah, we were actually exploring that earlier. If Captain Chaos, not sure if you remember, but we are exploring creating another sci channel within Science Fiction Remnant. I think what was it that we were going to call him? Fantasy Remnant or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, Fantasy Remnant. But we haven't started.
Yeah, we haven't really gauged, the interest on it. So I guess this would be the first time that I announce it on the channel. I think we did it on Twitter a while back, and didn't
I'm
really.
down, man.
Yeah, so let us know if you guys would be interested. I mean, we could definitely explore it.
And we'll have the Harry Potter, Mandrake, Lord of the Rings.
We could do Star Wars.
Yeah, there you go. We could do Star Wars. Yeah.
Why? Why? We signed an NDA on this one, so there's a conflict of interest. So we can do it on the other one.
I'm poking both of you today.
So
very slick, great. Very slick.
So before we go on a bigger
it's going to be some sort of advantage to being down under, right?
Yeah. Before we get in more of a tangent than we are, and obviously we have more rails, so there's.
Is that the sequel to Tenet? Tangent.
There you go. That's it. Starting the Mad Scientist and Captain Chaos. So we haven't been anywhere lately. So I guess we should start the show.
Yeah. I went to Mother's Day instead of something else.
So for all of you out there,
Mother's Day was the day, not a place.
Okay. For all of you out there who might not know, this show was actually recorded on Mother's Day. So,
but to you, but Carl,
to all the mothers there,
Jr.
Happy Mother's Day from our team.
Mwah.
Okay, so I guess we could start this puppy.
Space Bark.
So we are, in this episode, we're talking about Flight of the Navigator, as the title of the episode implies. This was a 1986 Disney movie. It was, to me, and this is going to be an interesting episode because I am slightly vested in this movie only because this is one of the few movies that my entire family enjoys. As a matter of fact, I think the term is love, which is not very common because I am, to them, a sci-fi freak, and they are not into sci-fi as much as I am.
Freak.
They are, and they are obviously exceptions. There's a lot of sci-fi movies out there, especially the mainstream ones that they enjoy. But they're not like me going out and finding all those obscure ones. And so this movie, and even on the mainstreams, it's not like they love. I mean, this is a good movie, and they enjoy, they can watch it again. But this one in particular is one they absolutely love. This movie was in 86. I was actually in Miami at the time. Were
you an extra?
That would have been awesome. I was 16 years old at the time, and
no, Ray, Robert's not an extra. It's unique and irreplaceable.
So this is the only reason why I actually placed this on our list of movies, and we took the opportunity to record it in this episode today. Now, why I say it is interesting is because, like I said before, I invested in this because it has a special meaning to actually to me and my entire family. But it's not the same case for our my two hosts here. So it would be really interesting to see their point of view. So before we get into it, plot maybe.
you finally noticed the ticker. I just put that up as a little reminder. I put that up as a little reminder. Yeah. Alrighty. So on July 4th, 1978, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Robert was watching.
Sorry. I was 8 years old in 78.
That's the plot of the different movie. 12-year-old David Freeman walks through the woods. The jungle. We'll get to that. Walks through the woods to pick up his 8-year-old brother Jeff from a friend's house when he falls into a ravine and is knocked unconscious. It's actually a culvert near the railway line, but anyway. When he comes to, 8 years have passed and it is now 1986. He has not aged and his appearance exactly matches his missing child poster. He is reunited with his aged parents and now 16-year-old brother Jeff. Meanwhile, an alien spaceship crashes through power lines and is captured by NASA. Because, NASA are evil bad guys. Hospital tests on David's brainwaves reveals images of the ship. Dr. Lewis Faraday, who has been studying it, persuades David to come to NASA research facility and discovers his mind is full of alien technical manuals and star charts and bad noodles. No, that's his stomach. That's what's full of bad noodles. Technical manuals and star charts far exceeding NASA's research, and that he was taken to the planet Phaelon, 560 light years away, in just 2.2 hours. Approximately 2,105,990.4 times the speed of light, apparently.
Wow.
I don't know who calculated that, but it's here in the plot. Having traveled faster than light, he has experienced time dilation, explaining how 8 years have passed on Earth, but not for him. Dr. Faraday decides to keep him there to finish his investigation, breaking the 48-hour promise. Following a telepathic communication from the spaceship, David secretly boards it and meets robotic commander Trimaxian drone ship, or he calls him Max, who calls him the Navigator. They escape the facility, and Max tells David that his mission is to travel the galaxy collecting biological specimens for analysis on Phaelon before returning them to their homes. Phaelon scientists discover that humans only use 10% of their brain and, in an experiment, filled the remainder of David's brain with miscellaneous information, star charts and stuff. Max returns him to Earth, but not to his own time, having determined that a trip back in time would be too dangerous for a human. When Max crashes the spaceship, the computer data of the star charts was erased, so he needs that information from David's brain to return home. How convenient that there was a local backup. While Max prepares for the mind transfer, David meets other alien specimens on board and bonds with Puckmarin, a tiny bat-like creature that is the last of his kind as a comet destroyed his planet. During the mind transfer, Max contracts. God, I didn't realize it was a disease. Max contracts human emotions and behaves eccentrically, which eccentric is rich person's crazy. In case you didn't know. His and David's bickering trigger UFO reports in Tokyo and the United States. Meanwhile, NASA intern Carol McAdams, who befriended David, tells his family about his escape in the spaceship. So Dr. Faraday has them confined to their house, and Carolyn is sent back to the facility. I don't know how NASA actually does that, because they're not a government. They're not an enforcement organization. They're a space exploration organization. So how are they confining people to their homes? I don't get that. When the spaceship stops at a gas station, David calls Jeff, who sets off fireworks on the roof so that David can find their new house. David and Max arrive there, but NASA agents have tracked the spaceship. Fearing that he will be institutionalized and treated like a guinea pig for the rest of his life if he remains in 1986, David orders Max to return him to 1978, accepting the risk of vaporization, because, everybody wants to be vaporized. Fun ways to die. So many. Yeah, if you want to know where that comes from, you need to watch our Patreon only pre-show stuff. Yeah. It was a bit crazy this week. It was space crazy.
Yeah.
He awakens in a ravine, walks home, and finds everything as he left it, aka in 1978. During the 4th of July celebration, Jeff sees that the Puckmarin has stowed away in David's backpack. David tells him to keep it secret, while Max flies home across the fireworks-lit sky, calling, "See you later, Navigator," which was our opening quote. Cue credits.
42.
64.
Fun ways to die.
If you if you're watching our YouTube, then you'll know why I said 42. If you're not, if you're listening to our pod, you probably have to wait until our YouTube channel releases this episode a month later, and then make sure you subscribe.
I'd say no.
No,
You found all my crazy ticker comments, didn't you?
Okay, so putting that aside, and again, if this is the first time you listen to our show and you're wondering why we get distracted,
it's Space Ray's fault.
We do have a ticker running on our video that it's meant for YouTube. So when you watch this episode a month later on YouTube, then you'll probably understand, and then reach out to us and let us know what you think. So just so you know, we're not going crazy. There is a very specific reason why we get distracted, like right now. So I guess it is time for that very first question. So the question that I always ask is, how old were you when you watched this movie for the first time, and what was your first impression, your very first thoughts? I'm not sure. I actually watched this when it came out. So for some reason, I want to go last on here, because I don't want to influence whoever has not watched this movie as long ago as I have. So, Gio, you saw this movie today for the first time, or?
Yep, today.
And Ray, you saw this a while back, I'm assuming.
I saw it in the cinemas.
Perfect. So you and me are on the same boat. Okay, so Captain Chaos, give us your first impression, because we already know how old you were.
Today is old.
It's a good movie. Awesome. Has a sense of adventure. You don't lose out on that movie. And I think that was a good thing. And it has a happy ending.
You know, I'm
sorry.
Yeah, no, I know. I have to say, I don't know if I should be surprised. I was actually surprised because I don't know if you guys know, but we try to do a watch party on our Discord channel. And this is the watch party that we did today. We usually do it every Sunday prior to the show, or we try to do it every Sunday prior to a show. So if you want to
join it,
yeah, it's fun because you get to watch this property with us, and we get to have a conversation about it. So if you haven't been in it, subscribe to our Discord and join.
It looks to reach talk to me live.
There you go. So I was surprised in the watch party and the conversation that me and Captain Chaos were having that he enjoyed this movie. And the reason why I said I'm surprised, I mean, I really love this movie, right? But it's I never pictured this being a movie that our very own Captain Chaos likes. And to all our audience out there that have actually followed our, let's call it bickering since season 1, you would know, and you probably agree with me. So I just wanted to say that and see. I don't know if our Captain Chaos has a comment on that, but I was surprised, and let me say, pleasantly surprised that he liked the movie like this one.
Yeah, it was good. It was good, man.
So let's go to our space cheese. I mean,
well, what did you say? Space cheese. Wow.
Our mad scientist. How old were you, and what was your first impression?
Oh, let's see. So I was 17 when this came out. So not a youngin, but still going to Disney movies at the cinema. I can't remember the situation around going to see this, but I do remember seeing it at the cinema, and I do remember thinking, wow, some of the choices in this movie were a bit okay, fine. We'll just overlook that. But I mean,
you have puffy hair?
I sorry, what?
Do you have puffy hair on the 80s?
Puffy hair? No, I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't have any hair in the 80s.
I don't know that the 80s fashion of the US translated to Australia. I think it was a different fashion, I think. But I might
back in the 80s in Australia, they had mullets.
Yeah, in the 80s, I remember seeing people going over an entire can of lacquer on their hair.
Oh God!
So they can bring that big all puff.
Don't put your hair anywhere near a naked flame, or you're gonna go up like a Roman candle.
Don't smoke.
No smoking. You won't smoke twice. That's for sure.
Then you might end up with a mohawk.
Yeah. Well, hey, David needed a signal. I guess somebody with burning afro would be a pretty good signal on the roof. Hey, there they are. That guy's head's on fire. Yeah. So anyway, I saw this in the cinema back in my old hometown of Albury, New South Wales, which is a little country town. I do remember watching this movie and trying to ignore the dodgy bits and sort of getting excited about oh, geez, I wish a spaceship would show up and take me away from this boring ass place. But
tired of the outback.
Yeah. Other than that, it didn't have a huge impact upon me, I don't think. Except, it was one of those things where you remember a couple of little good bits and you forget all the other sort of what the hell parts of the movie. But yeah, I think I've seen it once on TV since then, and I sort of came in. I came in at the scene where he was taking a leak with the cows. So I don't. It was halfway through the movie, so I didn't see the start. So I'd actually forgotten how long and droning the start was. It's like, come on, get on with it. Do something interesting. So yeah.
Nice.
I mean, there's this idea in storytelling called bait and switch, where you suggest that something is happening and then you change it out for something else, and they use this terribly in this movie.
Oh yes.
The first one is at the dog park, where they're doing the frisbee throwing. And there's this shadow that comes over everybody, and they're all looking up into the sky. And you're supposed to think, oh no, the spaceship's shown up, because there's a spaceship in this movie. And no, it's the _𝙍𝙬𝙗𝙤𝙗𝙗 blimp. And then
rewind. When the movie starts,
there's the frisbee looks like a UFO. Yes.
A UFO. You think, oh, that's
so I didn't count that one. Shit, there was another
across the skyline of Fort Lauderdale, and all of a sudden you see a dog grab it. It's always a frisbee.
Yeah, so there's the frisbee bait and switch, there's the _𝙍𝙬𝙗𝙗𝙗 blimp bait and switch, and then he's going through the forest, and it's looking all creepy, and something's going to happen, and then he sees something oval shaped with lights on it through the trees, and then he steps out around the tree, and it's a water tower. So 3 bait and switches in the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit heavy-handed.
That was really? Dice it.
And then they go, well, we'll just go boop, and he's gone 8 years into the future. We'll just cut that whole section out. So they bait and switch, and then do nothing. It's like, what stylistic choices, guys? Come on.
For nothing, no, man. And after the third bait and switch, they just give you the area right there. Boom.
Yeah. And then Max drives into the high tension power lines, because that's what you do when you're an alien spaceship.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, he needed a navigator after he did that.
Was a fuse, bro.
Oh, right.
Everything
I was wondering.
In a quantum computer.
He got straightened after the electrical bolts. You guys kind of heard me say about my first impression of this movie earlier, but basically this is a movie that I shared with my entire family. Not sure if it was the fact that it was close to home. We were living in Miami. This was supposedly Fort Lauderdale, which was about an hour away. But it was a movie that we all enjoyed. I remember, to me, being a sci-fi lover that I am, it was kind of cool that the spaceship design, although it's not the best special effect.
Space Nuts.
I sort of look at it in the same sort of vein as The Last Starfighter.
Yes.
Very, very early, but very impressive for the time, because we hadn't seen anything much like it.
Yeah, I mean, compared to The Last Starfighter, this had better special effects.
Yeah.
However, it's still, there's still an uncanny valley watching it from today's perspective, right? But at the time, it was really impressive to me, and especially the interior of the ship, the design of Max. I think there were even toys at the time. It kind of, to me, as a sci-fi fan, it's reminiscent of Cylons. If you have watched the original Battlestar Galactica, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Everything chrome. It was really cool to me, and it was really impressive. I mean, I was 16 years old at the time, 16, 17. So it was a fun, not only the visuals to me at the time, but the content of the movie. It was a lot of fun. And in retrospect, I realized there was a lot of scientific topics being delivered, but at the time I did not notice because of the way that this has been delivered throughout the plot of the movie. So I'm interesting to see what your guys' perspective is on that. So, Gio, what do you think about? I guess we can start with you, and then we can move on to Ray. How do you feel about the science facts hidden within the story and how it was delivered?
I think that they didn't put that much effort on the reality of the technology. They play more with multiple universe science traveling, theoretically speaking. The spaceship, computers, etc., didn't make any sense to their capabilities of a computer should look like or do,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, what is your thought on that one? And I know this is probably going to be a floodgate for you, because even when you watched it from not necessarily from today's perspective, because I know
Ray was like, no.
that is a given from today's perspective, but from your earlier, when you were 17, you already noticed. So this is going to be the floodgate opening for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, back then I wasn't watching it with a critical eye. I mean, there was things that didn't quite work for me, but I just sort of glossed over them because I was kind of interested in what was happening sort of in the more interesting parts of the movie, like the alien species and a ship that could adjust its shape for the sort of speed of maneuvers that it wanted to do through an atmosphere, like it's basically a space probe that can function as a spaceship because it doesn't need a pilot to do what it's designed to do. And of course, it has a ridiculously fast engine. It can go at massive times the speed of light. So it had a lot of interesting ideas. The design was unusual. I hadn't seen a spaceship design like that before. Everybody thinks the stairs are funky, and of course I thought the stairs were pretty funky.
Yeah.
The hull actually opens up and becomes the stairs, which float in space, so they're anti-grav stairs, which are cool. So of course the hull / door / stairs part of the ship kind of reminded me of the T-1000 as well.
Oh yeah.
In that it could morph and become different things. So that was an idea that was sort of floating around at the time as well. So yeah, I mean, my sci-fi addicted brain at the time was having a lot of fun with those concepts. Of course, my writer's brain now kind of goes whack. But yeah, I guess that they're all the upsides. The downsides is like NASA as the bad guys. Are you kidding me? I mean, there might be a few conspiracy theorists out there that the moon landings were fake. Conspiracy theorists might be considering that NASA could be bad guys, but it didn't work for me. I'm sorry. There's nothing in the universe tells me that NASA act like that.
Yeah.
The NSA, maybe CIA, sure, but not NASA. NASA's too busy looking up at the sky and going, wow, to do anything like that.
I have to agree with you, because that's the one thing that I noticed when I was younger and I saw this for the first time. It was a little disorienting for me. It's like, hold on a second, NASA security? Is that a thing? But yeah, no, it was very odd.
Not the police.
Yeah.
The NASA police, space police.
So yeah. So and I guess now, I guess this question would be only for Ray at this time, because we already know that Gio saw because Gio saw this movie today.
He was today
really
years
no
old.
comparison.
Yeah.
There's no comparison.
So, Gio, in the last few hours, what did you think about?
Yeah, let's go there.
Actually, yeah, I do think the same.
So now, as a perspective, as a the contrast between what you just said, that was your basically first experience on story and the visuals. Now bring it to today's day, when you watch this. I believe you watched this today for the last time, or was it?
Well, it's in the last 24 hours. It was kind of
Okay.
like before midnight for me, but like you guys are at what's the time there now?
Right now it's 9 p.m.
9 p.m. Yeah. So basically, Mother's Day at 10 p.m. I started watching this movie. So in an hour's time for you guys, I would have started watching this movie. But of course, it's Monday for me at 11 a.m. So I'm a little bit ahead. Hi from the future.
Yeah, say hi to Max for us.
No worries.
I want to do a more with Max, and he says Ray, and he says Calvin Klein.
Oh God.
Okay, did we derail your comments?
Yeah, I thought just went off a cliff.
Oh wow.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, this wasn't the best written movie ever. Having Nasser as the bad guys probably wasn't a really solid choice, but I mean, it's an interesting idea, executed somewhat dodgily. The heavy use of bait and switch in the beginning got a little bit annoying. The whole idea of being able to escape solitary confinement at NASA,
well,
in a robot postie machine.
Let's think about it for a minute. It is easy to escape NASA because it's not NASA security, it's not the FBI, it's not NSA. I don't know. Maybe that's just.
But they let the little robot wander around the base, and they even open up the roller doors for it. But they don't check inside it. No, it's like, oh, it's one of our robots. Must be fine. In you go, little guy.
Even their dog. I remember the dog barking at it.
Yeah.
Like, come on, we'll get you dinner.
Well, I think they delivered meals in it as well as post and stuff. So it was sort of like a multi-role robotic child sneak in device. I don't know what you'd call it, but it was just a bit silly. I mean, it's a kid's movie. We can just be silly. It's very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
And correct me if I'm wrong in this, as like from a writing perspective, I get a feel, and even now watching this in retrospect, that this movie, as your typical Disney movie, and that's not saying much though, because we have had there have been some well-written Disney movies out there, but this was just mainly written, in my opinion, maybe for kids with the emotional aspect in mind.
Well, I think they did David's or Davey, as Max calls him. I think they did his reactions to what was going on quite well. Like, he was unreasonable and scared and pulled the thing off his head when the information was coming out of his head and he didn't know where it was coming from, and ran off, which is completely 12-year-old thing to do. So I didn't have a problem with the way he reacted to things. He wasn't like an adult acting in a child's body. He was acting like a child, which was fine. It's just the complete obliviousness of the security guards. It was like, oh my God, they weren't acting like adults. I guess everybody was acting like kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like the concept, and I guess switching up to the next topic here. When I watched this for the first time, I really enjoyed the concept of being adopted by an alien and being brought back at a future date when no time has elapsed for you. When I watched this for the first time, it wasn't one of those things that it wasn't common for me, the concept, right? I was 16. But I found it fascinating. And now as an adult and talking, thinking about it in retrospect, I can see how that is scientifical, in fact. With, we're going to talk about this in the science behind science fiction with the time dilation. But what do you guys thought about that aspect? I mean, for me, it was a new concept. I really liked it, didn't quite understand it at the time. Obviously, Gio saw this today for the first time, so I guess we can have his answer last as to what he thought about that concept and how that concept played in this movie. So we could start with Ray.
All right. So I spent a little bit of time ragging some of their stylistic choices and their writing choices, but the basis of the story, which is the kid reappearing after 8 years and not having aged, is actually scientifically accurate based on what they said happened to him, which was quite interesting. And the way his family reacted, the way the government reacted, and all the sort of interactions with the spaceship, all of that was done quite well. It made the story interesting. It probably could have had a slightly faster pace, or put a little bit more into it to make it a little bit more interesting. Although I guess if this is aimed at kids, you don't want to make it too complicated because they'll just get lost. But as a 17-year-old, when I first saw this, it was I could completely follow it. I didn't understand the exact situation about time dilation, but as it was explained in the movie, it made sense to me. So I mean, they did quite well in that regard. There were a few things they glossed over, which were like, what the fuck, sort of choices. But for the most part, I thought that the story was good. It's just the execution was a little bit iffy. So yeah, I mean, it's not a bad movie. It's just not a great movie, if you know what I mean.
Well, I could say, and I don't know if I echoed you guys, and you guys let me know if I do or not, but I think to summarize this movie, it's a fun movie. That's what I get. Do you guys agree with that statement?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, it's kind of fun to imagine, being whisked away from Earth on an alien spaceship and then getting to fly it around and stuff like that. But, there was a lot of really sort of disturbing issues that David had to deal with. Suddenly being thrown 8 years into the future, everybody being much older and he hasn't changed, going into his house and finding other people living there, that would freak you out. especially when you thought that, you know, no time had passed and somebody else is living in your house. Like that's a nightmare fuel right there for a 12-year-old. And when he realizes that he's going to be a guinea pig for the rest of his life if he gets off the spaceship, it's like, well, kid, you have no life left on this planet. If you get off this ship now, you're a guinea pig. They're going to lock you away.
That was
your personal rights are gone because of this situation you find yourself in, because NASA are evil bastards. What? Hang on. How does that work? How does that work again?
You know, that is a one really dark thing about this movie. Really, really dark. And let me explain why. Towards the end of this movie, he realizes, just like you said, you know, this is not my home. I don't belong here. If I stay, it's just going to be more and more of this. I mean, he finally got to his house and it was full of police officers and NASA security and
every emergency service you could think of. Exactly. Fire, ambulance, paramedic, everybody was there. It's like, aren't you supposed to be keeping this spaceship a secret? Why did you get everybody over there?
Exactly. So why I said it was the darkest thing about this movie, and you know, for all of you out there who doesn't know me, I don't like dark. He came to the realization that he doesn't belong there and he doesn't want to go through that. And he prefers to risk death and returning back to his time than staying safe with all that going on. And I don't know what kind of level of safe you could call that, being, you know, a prisoner of NASA security. I love saying that for some reason.
The year is 1986. NASA security have taken over America.
So, you know, because even Max told him, I mean, are you sure you could be vaporized? That's the reason why he didn't try it in the first place, because it was a risk. And the reason for that little alien thing, I forgot his name. You mentioned it, Ray. There you go. For the reason for, well, the reasons are slightly different because his planet got destroyed by a comet. But he'd rather die, basically, than stay there. That's where it came down to. And I found that really dark for a kid's movie. However, it wasn't delivered that way. Do you agree with that? I mean, he didn't quite.
I mean, it's a tough choice for a 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, like you said, this is not this is my family, but this is not my home.
Yeah, I mean,
which is quite right.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, and Ray, you probably have a better answer for this than I, but I think it was scientifically proven that the brain is not mature until reaches the age of at least 25.
25, yes.
It varies between men and women slightly, but yeah, roughly. There's a series of developmental passes, I guess you'd call them, that start at the back of the brain and move to the front of the brain. So the frontal cortex, where you do most of your higher level thinking, which is, you know, the part in the humans which is highly developed, and that's what gives us our consciousness. It is the last part of the brain to fully mature, and that is at the age of 25. So women maybe 23, 24, men 25, which coincidentally is why car insurance is so high up till the age of 25, especially for young men, because the frontal cortex is where you do most of your, well, if I do this, what might happen thinking. So, you know, if I drive really fast and attempt to go around this bend when I'm driving too fast, what might happen? I might run in my car and write it off. or cause even more damage. But I'm not thinking about that because my brain hasn't matured yet between the ages 17 and 24. So that's why car insurance is so massive and so expensive for people under the age of 25, because your brain hasn't finished developing yet and you're not thinking ahead far enough or enough in general.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard that before, now it should make a lot of sense to you now. If you think back to your earlier years prior to your age of 25 as to decisions you made. This is a very common thing. And I remember when I first learned of this, I had an aha moment, because I always thought, thinking back on choices that were made, it's like, what was I thinking? I mean,
you weren't. That's the problem.
But it does make sense after I learned this fact that you really don't see consequences. I mean, you might have a good head on your shoulders, but your decisions are not influenced by your perception of what the consequences of those actions will be.
Well, it's a combination of things that you haven't spent enough time experiencing things to have that wisdom of the knowledge of what happens when I do this. This happens when I do that. You're still building that up. You haven't got that yet. And it's part of a social development as well, in that when your brain is still developing, you're supposed to go out and take risks and experience new things. That whole line about there's a time to do that, and that time is college. And that's that time where you're a young adult, but your brain hasn't finished developing yet. So you go and do stupid things like try drugs and wild sex and running around half the night half naked and whatever the hell else you did during those times. And you look back on it. Sorry, what did you do, Gia?
Don't do wild sex. Have civilized sex.
Oh, okay, right, fair enough. And you can see all of that in Only Cheers. But the point being that young men and women do crazy things because their brains haven't finished developing yet. And then once you've had those experiences and know what not to do, if you survived it, then you take that knowledge with you as wisdom into your later years, and you settle down because your brain has now changed. And people think, once you hit 25 and your brain's finished developing, that's it. You're a finished product. Well, you're not. Every decade, you go back and look at things differently because your brain has changed. You will keep changing throughout your entire life, gathering wisdom, gathering understanding, looking at things differently, learning new paradigms about life and about how to react and how to do things. That is why older people have wisdom and younger people don't, is because it takes time to gather it. And then your brain changes in response to that to then use it. And you can't really use it when you're young unless, I'm sure there's a few people who can, but in general, no.
Yeah. So the reason why I brought that up is to have that in context when you think about his decision when Max told him that he will be, there's a possibility that he could be vaporized if he goes back to time, back in time to bring him back to the point where he left.
Fun ways to die. So many.
And yes, we are aware it's dumb ways to die, but you have to be a patron to find out why it's being fun. It's only for Patreon. So going back to what I was saying is, not only the fact he's a 12-year-old and have not experienced, and I say 12-year-old biologically, because we know that he is 20 based on the time that he was born. But biologically, he is 12. He hasn't have enough time for accumulating wisdom. Now, on top of that, his brain is of a 12-year-old which hasn't been fully developed. So he could be a very, very bright, because that's what it shows in this movie, as he's being a very bright 12-year-old. But he has those two things against him when making decisions. So would that
It's
make
a pretty
sense?
accurate portrayal of the age, as I said. He doesn't act like an adult.
Yeah.
But he is still quite smart for his age. So yeah, I think you're quite right.
What do you think about that, Gio? And how
Did you get all of the? I mean, you got your two deep thinkers over here who saw this thing ages ago and had time to think about it. But what did you pick up from one watch a few hours ago?
Well, what captured the most to me was the tampering with the timeline.
timeline tampering?
Yeah, it happened. This movie called it out.
You have a really good point, and let me say why. This is one of those few movies that deal with time travel, but
Dimensionally.
the way that time travel happens, it did not allow for messing up the timeline except for the ending. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Typically, when you have time travel movies, there's always something that gets messed up.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, the way that it was written, I guess, it doesn't allow for that until the end. But then we don't know because the movie ends when he comes back. So, in a way, that was a mechanism to bring happy ending to the movie, because then everything that was done prior in this movie is undone. And we like to think that the normal progress that should have happened prior to him being adopted would continue to happen, which is the normal or natural way on how the future should have unfold.
Except for the fact that the Puck Marine is there and it's brought an alien virus to Earth and probably will kill everybody.
You have a point there. I completely forgot about that one. Because you have no idea. I mean, he could be fine for now, but how many pathogens do we know that take some time to mature?
Hey, look, the creepy worm thing had a cold.
Yeah,
so
that is true. I mean, was he isolated? I mean, do we know that Max had him isolated in a way that we don't understand? Would that be a thing?
Possibly.
It's a possibility, but what if? Yeah. You know, and that pathogen is on his shirt. You know, I mean, he did not sneeze, but there's a lot of what ifs when it comes to that, because it's something that the movie hasn't really explained, and it's for us here, deep thinkers, to kind of digest.
I feel sorry for Gio sometimes. I mean, the way we go on, he's just sitting there going, "Oh God, they're doing it again." It's fine, sitting back there like, "Oh shit, when are they going to stop?"
I can put in a stop also listening to YouTube.
Just stop.
So I hope you guys are watching this on YouTube and you can see what I just put on the scroll. Yes, I know Max on a personal level. Okay. So
you guys would say that the technology for the backdoor and everything was nanotechnology?
That is very interesting. We kind of got a first-hand experience with, actually, when was Terminator? Terminator 2?
Terminator, let me see.
It was
Hmm.
91, so it was 5 years later.
5 years later. So, we see this kind of technology, and like Ray said, the very first mainstream thing that we can think of is Terminator 2. But it is a really cool idea. Science fiction idea, basically, not science. That I like to think it's something that is being at least thought out, not necessarily researched, because this could actually bring a lot of money to companies. Like if you think about it for the perspective of durability, right? Imagine a technology like that being used in roads. So you lay that road and it never has to be repaired. Think about this.
What will the shovel leaners do if the roads never moved? Less than they do now.
Let's bring this concept a little home to at least half or like 2/3 of the host here. Let's consider home building in the state of Florida, at least South Florida, when it comes to hurricanes. As you know, the damage that a hurricane basically does is when air actually comes inside the house, and the pressure differences would cause the roof to, basically explode. And that's where the major damage happens. And that's why the houses are built structurally different, but it doesn't matter if you have a strong enough hurricane, damages will happen. For example, the last one we had, it was called Hurricane Ian. It completely destroyed, it was Fort Myers Beach and all the coastal areas in this side of Florida. So imagine what kind of improvements would do to have a building that that you could actually secure during a hurricane. I mean, granted, it's going to bring its own challenges, and I could probably hear Ray's head, gear whining up really fast, because then you have to consider bringing oxygen inside the house. But you have a house that not only repairs itself, but it could seal completely, so no difference in pressure would happen, and the hurricane would not be able to cause the damage that it normally does, regardless of what strength that hurricane might have. However, you might have to consider now having oxygen tanks, because there's no way for air to come in and out. But that again, that's far-fetched. I'm just trying to prove a point. When the type of technology is a self-repairing technology, the aircrafts, for example, aside from being really cool, to being able to climb up those anti-grav stairs, which is completely different technology altogether.
Yeah.
But the technology of shaping a material to the way that you want it to shape at will and as many times as you want, it's really cool to me. What I guess we could start with Captain Chaos, and then we can move to Ray, because I know Ray has a lot to say about it.
I think that they, again, I don't think that they went deep into the decision of how technology works. I think that they could have done that, but you were talking about the hot area when the Cold War just ended. Um, it would have been normality for somebody talking about something like this in this time, to be called conspiracies,
Hmm.
So people don't would not speak out either. Makes sense.
I don't know. I don't know if Ray has a different perspective, but I find your last sentence hard hearing. I couldn't hear it very well. You came in and out.
Basically, what I'm saying is that in the times that the movie was made, like nobody would believe you if this was real.
Correct.
So they didn't put much effort into the explanation, scientific hard science behind the technologies, even the ship.
I agree, and also the fact that this was a Disney movie, and I still believed it was geared towards kids.
Yeah.
So they were going for that sensationalism of the spectacle.
Yeah, I wonder was just.
I mean, you can say
Yeah,
that, but I
right, right.
mean, as the science behind science fiction section will demonstrate, there's a lot of the ideas which are, you know, even if they seem far fetched, are still being researched and considered even up to this day, and they're not like throwaway ideas. They're ideas that are being taken seriously. So, I mean, yeah, the movie was pitched low. It was pitched for, you know, early teens, but the science in it wasn't garbage. It was stuff that, you know, has a foothold and has a presence and could become something. I mean, who wouldn't want a ship that could change its shape so that it can move through atmosphere better and have hover stairs? I mean, that's cool. Beyond anything else, I mean, the rule of cool and all that. But yeah, I mean, I don't see that any of that was just throwaway ideas. I think they all have a place in possibility, in futuristic design and material science. So I don't think that any of it was utter bullshit. I've never complained about the ship design or the way it functioned, because it made sense. There was no nonsensicalness about it. It was more some of the storytelling choices that were like, what? But yeah, I mean, the science, I didn't see much in the way of any problems with the science. A lot of it lived in science fiction, but it still was internally consistent, which is kind of the necessity I find, is that I don't have any problem with science fiction in a world that makes sense within that world. So the science can be way out there, but as long as it fits within the world which the story is being told, there isn't a problem. It's internally consistent, and that's what it needs to be. But when you know, like you have a throwaway thing just to push the plot forward or solve a plot hole that the writers discovered at 3 a.m, and they just went, oh, we'll just patch that over, just fix that with this bullshit piece of science. That's when I have a problem. And there was none of that in this movie.
Yeah, I think, and again, one of the things that I always say about this movie is I really like how they delivered the science. You know, there has been others, you know, other IPs that could, you know, you could argue you have to deliver it better. But why I said this one did a good job is because this movie, in my opinion, was geared to kids or teenagers. And I always enjoy and feel happy when you're able to deliver science to that young demographic, because that could, and in essence, and I like to think so, eventually one of those kids, one of those teenagers will feel interested enough in the topic that could become future scientists or people in the field.
Or they could join NASA security.
There you go. There's no cooler place, man. NASA security is the place to be.
Well, the bar to get in is pretty low because they're all pretty stupid. But
you have to be a meathead, and then you're in.
You have to play cards and ignore your charges and let them escape robots that wander in and out of the room without being monitored.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is kind of
derp.
Another thing that I was thinking about when I was watching the movie is the way that David was almost like if he had a sixth sense. Did you get that through the movie, or was it a point where you actually went like, oh, okay, this is what's going on?
Clearly, he had information that no one else had because his brain had been filled up with stuff from the alien. But I don't know that he had a sixth sense. He was being communicated with telepathically by a spaceship. Now that's special in and of itself.
Yeah.
Who's to say that the spaceship wasn't feeding him information? It didn't necessarily need to be a sixth sense.
So it's, and that does make a lot of sense. I'm just thinking, it could be many things. Obviously, the experience that he went obviously was not an experience that anyone else within this storyline has experienced. Obviously, the fact that his brain was tinkered with by an alien entity. I mean, how many superhero movies starts like that? But he had a connection with this alien entity. So, like, for example, when the girl came in the room and he realizes that he's not going home tomorrow, that he is staying one more week at the very least, and he goes straight to the mirror, which at the time I thought it was just a mirror, and realized that no, this is actually one of those two-way mirrors, and
an observation port,
and he's just screaming at these guys. When I was 16, that actually took me by surprise because I honestly thought that was a mirror until you could see from the other end that it was actually he was actually being observed. So yeah, that's what brought up this question. The fact that, do you think that tinkering, the alien tinkering with his brain, caused some unexpected reaction?
It could have. I mean, it wasn't delved into.
Yes.
No, nothing was stated in the dialogue related to that. I mean, sure, a lot of the times in TV shows of the era, there'd be a two-way mirror and somebody be watching through it. And it was a common trope in interview rooms.
Yes, especially when it comes to aliens.
And you got to remember that we were seeing him interacting with people, but he was sitting in that room twiddling his thumbs for a whole evening. And a smart kid looking around, he'd go, okay, I don't see any cameras, so they're not watching me with cameras. I'll bet you that mirror's a two-way mirror. I mean, it's something that you could reasonably expect a 12-year-old to pick up on if they're switched on. And he was quite switched on.
Yes. Oh, yes.
He was quick-witted. He was a bit bratty. And while he wasn't reacting well to the stuff that was coming out of his head because it was completely out of expectation, most of his interactions were quite confident. He wasn't like a neat or anything. He was quite a confident, outgoing kid. He wasn't real confident with the girl he was interested in, but other than that, he wasn't displaying any major confidence issues. And even to the point where a young Sarah Jessica Parker hits on him. You know, she's 19 or so, and he's 12. But you know,
yeah, you like older men.
She still tells him he's cute. So you know, he's got enough confidence to impress a girl who's, you know, finished high school. So yeah, I mean, she's an intern, so she's obviously at least 18 or 19. Or maybe even a bit older, but yeah, I mean, he impressed her with his, you know, coolness and the way he was dealing with the situation. So he was. I don't think he was your standard 12-year-old. I think he was a bit functioning above that. Could have been an effect of the upload into his head, making, you know, his brain function at a higher level than it would normally. I had a okay. I'm joining the ranks of the deep overthinkers here.
Welcome
with this one.
Welcome to the club.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I was just thinking. Okay, we know that this whole humans only use 10% of their brain thing's utter bullshit these days.
Oh yeah,
it was a nice idea at the time, but there's activity across your entire brain. It's not running all the time. So when they initially did scans that they couldn't be doing in real time back in the day, they went, oh, there's only bits of the brain that's doing stuff. So obviously the rest of us not doing anything, which is a load of horseshit. Different parts of the brain work at different times. So you'd have to be scanning somebody constantly to see different areas light up, and that's what they couldn't do at the time. So that's why they come up with this idea that we only use 10% of our brains, because that's all they could see in one scan. Mm-hmm. But different parts of the brain activate depending on what you're doing. If you're watching something intently, if you're listening to music, if you're, you know, feeling something with your hands, if you're
the science fiction Remnant.
Yeah, so all sorts of different things create different activities in different parts of the brain.
Have you ever wondered?
Yes, many times.
Yeah,
sorry, I should let you finish.
Continue.
No, just wonder.
what are we wondering about, Gio? You just sort of stopped, so I thought I'd jump in there.
No. My question went off.
So I feel better now. It's not an age thing. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh dear. Yeah. Okay. So let's see if I can get my train back on the tracks here. So they were saying, oh, he's only using 10% of his brain. So they filled up the rest of his brain with star charts and all these other things. But then it was acting more like he had a sub AI in his head, because it was answering questions and he didn't know why it was doing it. And I was thinking, maybe it was a translation error, and it's not a case of they filled up the rest of his brain with information, but they compressed the biological part of his brain, filled up the rest of his cranium with alien technology. That's where my mind went. And I was thinking, yeah, I was thinking like they implanted an AI in his head to see if he could cart it around and have it interact with things and stuff. So it was like an experiment. I mean, come on, clearly these aliens have no ethics if they're going to fuck with people's brains, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, this species is sentient, and you know they have communication, they have civilization and stuff. But we'll just abduct one of their non-adult child entities, and we'll fuck with its brain. And we just we have no ethics. I'm sorry, we're aliens. We don't believe in that crap. But you know, if they're gonna like fill up his brain with this stuff, and you know, if he's only using 10% now, what if he needed some more capacity and it was already used up? Like, are you going to stunt the kid's growth? Is he never going to mature because you filled his brain up with all this other stuff? Is it going to self-purge? did it get taken out when the spaceship scanned him? None of this stuff is covered. But my overthinking brain went to the point of, well, maybe it was a translation error, and it wasn't a case of they filled up the rest of his biological brain with star charts and various other things in an AI that could talk to computers and binary. But it was actually that they compressed the parts of his brain that weren't used down to the bits that he was using and filled the rest of his cranium with an AI storage subsystem.
They compressed it to JPEG.
Yeah, they just basically used the rest of his head. And the reason why he couldn't go back in time was because the gravitational forces in time travel would cause this mechanical part that's in his head to crush his biological brain. Kill him off.
Now that you're thinking, you're oh man, your overthinking brain is acting my overthinking brain.
I told you that I walked into your territory.
So, based on what you just said, this kid cannot mature anymore, because some of the things that we have talked in previous episodes is how, the fact that we can't live forever is because our brain cannot retain. We see an example of this in an episode of Doctor Who, where someone was actually writing journals to try to remember the things that happened because they can't retain everything in their life. So this kid cannot mature if they take up most of, like the rest of the brain. So he would have a short time memory. Does that make sense? Because there's no space to retain.
He wouldn't be able to develop long-term memories because there'd be no storage left.
Oh wow. Okay, Gio, when are you joining the club? I just converted Ray. Ray is a convert.
You I don't think you converted me. I think I just stepped into the room by myself. I've tap danced. I tap dance around that room all the time. My brain being a writer, my brain is always coming up with plots and devious things. And well, you guys both have access to my current work in progress. So excuse me, my cyborg parts are bleeping at me.
That's cyborg. Yeah. So oh, there we go. So we were wondering where our very own Captain Chaos was. We can only hear his disembodied voice.
Isn't that a podcast?
My Discord updated, so it kicked me out.
Yeah. Okay, so being that this movie, I mean, I find this movie really fun. And all the concepts being delivered were delivered in a fluffy way,
Not the way I look at it. They're more like the Borg.
Yeah, I can see. I mean, maybe. No, I was going to say maybe it's my nostalgic brain, but then again, you saw this when you were young too, so
yeah,
that does not explain that. I was
just weird. Space weird.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm Space Admiral Happy Ending, so
yeah,
that does explain it. But then again, it doesn't explain it for Captain Chaos.
Oh, he only saw it today. Give it a chance to percolate.
Okay, so I think now we're at the point of this show where we ask, what question, Captain Chaos? And he has no voice. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. By the way, you are muted in Discord, by the way.
Yeah.
There we go. So what was the question?
I didn't ask any question. You want to ask a question?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Your favorite question is what I'm about to ask.
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Since I am Admiral Happy Ending here, I think I should go first, and then let the show just go downhill from here. I really enjoy this movie, partly for nostalgic reasons, partly because this is one sci-fi movie that I can share with my entire family, which is not something that I could say happens for all my sci-fi love. It is not a deep movie by any chance, at least in my perspective. I enjoyed it. It was fun. There was a lot of laughs. But overall, one of the things that I like the most, if you know me well, is I
Sarah
really
Jessica Parker. I know you well.
besides that, I was 16. I was 16, and the teenage Sarah, yeah. But aside from that, this movie, one thing that I liked, it might not be accurately done or perfectly done. There might be other examples of other things that do it better. But it is a way to expose kids to science. I think it delivers some of the concepts in a way that you don't really need to think as a kid. And I guess I can speak from a personal perspective. This is one of the few movies that kind of open up my hunger. And I really appreciate when any content, not just movies, TV shows, YouTube videos, podcasts, whatever it might be, I really, really appreciate when you have any type of scientific communication at any type, right? Obviously, you have your heavy hitters, and one of the ones that I consider heavy hitters would be Star Talk with Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. They delivered science, pure science. But I do appreciate also what I like to call the light scientific communicators. And the reason why is they are not heavy for those people that maybe are not experienced with the concept of science, or maybe they're, for any reason, it's just enough science to get you get that scientific muscle awakened, or get you that moment of, this is interesting, I want to know more. And if this movie has done that, I am the happiest person, because now more than ever, we need not just more scientists, but people that think scientifically. In today's age,
we'll end up like Idiocracy.
Yes, exactly. We lived in a world where information is delivered and people consume it regardless if it is a scientific fact or no. And scientific facts are being discredited without any like fact as to why. And to me, science is exactly what has gotten us to where we are now. And without that, we can't continue going forward. And obviously, as a science fiction lover, I want some of those concepts on sci-fi to become reality. Notice how I say some.
Yeah, there's a few that are a bit dark and we could do without them.
Exactly. Those are meant for cautionary tales of the technologies that we import. But basically, bringing it back to the movie, this is the reason why. I feel very happy when a scientific communicator or communication brings that message to young minds, because there's a very strong possibility that we will have just one more scientist because of that interest that kid or the teenager had on a specific concept, scientific concept being delivered in an IP. So I have many reasons for liking this movie, but those are my main points. So after that, any of you want to take it next?
You want to go next, Gio?
Yeah, I can take it next. I'll make it short. I was today the days old when I watched this movie. I think it's a wholesome movie for the family. Just like Robert said, it was aimed to a young audience, right? Do you guys agree?
Mm-hmm.
And it concentrated more on the emotional side of conveying a message than the scientific, if you think about it.
There's
It
a lot
was
of
more
emotion.
the antagonist with security and
That's a
and
security.
like he being held on knowing what's going on, missing his family, being separated from them. They concentrated more on that aspect of the movie. I think it's a good movie. I think it's worth rewatch. But I'm not sure if the movie really would bring a continuation. Like there's nothing more to happen. It was perfectly developed with a beginning, development, and a conclusion.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. This is, now that I think of it, it's one of the few movies, and you guys know me well, that I want a
Mhm.
part two to everything I see.
Everything you see that isn't, dark and horrible ending.
Exactly,
right.
exactly. Except for Event Horizon.
Yeah.
Aliens.
Yeah, aliens.
Well, there is a part 2 to Event Horizon. It's called Warhammer 40K.
So this is one of to echo Gio here. This is one of the few movies that I don't really see myself wanting a part 2. I think that the story was delivered and is
Yeah.
perfect how it is, and is began and ended and done.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Okay, so I guess is
My
that
turn?
was that all, Gio?
Yep.
Okay.
So something that I didn't get to comment on because the topic ran away in another direction. But just before I give my final thoughts, I wanted to say that the whole idea of him causing a paradox by going back in time and rewriting the past where he doesn't disappear. Basically, if you look at the way they handle time travel and different outcomes and changing the future and stuff like that in Back to the Future, it works on the case of different timelines, and sort of also the way they handle it in Steins Gate with different world lines and jumping world lines. That sort of concept would fit into this movie, in that the stuff that he did in the future, now he's gone back to the past, is in a different timeline, different world line. So he's now swapped to a world line where he didn't disappear. So it exists. It's just exists in a different temporal reality.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned that, I saw a YouTube video. It's a short film, and I don't know if you guys have seen it. And as a matter of fact, I feel ashamed because I lost the link, and I don't even remember how it was called. It was actually this guy. They had this time machine. When he presses the button, he goes back, I think it was 10 seconds into the past. So he goes and sits down in this bench with this beautiful woman, and he's trying to win her over. And every time he fails, he presses that button and tries again. And every time is different and different until he wins her over.
Groundhog Day.
And she's reading this book towards the end, and it's like, yeah, time travel. You know, I have actually researched this, and do you know what happens if you achieve it? You kind of, just like you said, because apparently this box that he has, she says that you actually die when you press the button, and you move to another, world line. So the guy kind of got really
Paranoid,
wide, panic or fear or whatever. Because if you count the times, I think he did it over 100 times. So he killed himself 100 times to win over this woman.
Oh my!
But if it's functionally unrecognizable that you died, what difference does it make?
Yeah, but it's kind of funny. The reason why I brought it up is funny because they went back and retraced the times where he came from, and the difference, the different reactions that the woman had. In one point, in one of the realities, the woman just stood up and let the guy there. And the other one, and the other one, she was screaming for help. And the other one, she was calling 911. So I'm sorry, I had to bring that up because when you said that, it's like, oh my God.
It sounds like he's playing a gal game for real. And it's just bad ending after bad ending after bad ending after bad ending.
So he threw the box away at the
end. 99 bad endings, and this isn't one.
Oh God, I wish I can remember the name. A guy, if I
find out because I'm interested.
I'll post it on our Discord. So if you guys are not in our Discord, you just make sure and get to our invite link and join up.
Yeah, come join us.
So I'm sorry to hijack your comment there, Ray, but go ahead.
How could you do it, Space Robert?
Go ahead, a space mad scientist.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I mean, I look at all of these IPs now and what's produced in them, be it a single movie or multiple movies and series and all these sorts of things, with an eye for internal consistency. And as I said earlier, this movie, although some stylistic choices in the telling and some decisions about just jumping the shark and skipping over things that don't make sense, like security being completely useless. Did you see the hashtag, by the way, Robert?
Yes, yes, please. If you're watching in YouTube, you want to know, go ahead and start using the hashtag. We want to know. Make sure
I don't know if it's going to catch on. I don't know if that one's going to catch on, but I created it for you, Robert. So.
Well, if you tag NASA on it, maybe,
maybe, yeah, maybe. Actually, that's something I was going to bring up that I thought of after I watched the movie. So, something that I thought of when I watched the movie, but hadn't brought up in the podcast yet, is the whole of this movie kind of felt like a Men in Black file to me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why, but at the end of the movie, I was hearing the Men in Black theme. Because it's just like something bonkers that would happen in Men in Black with the aliens doing some bullshit and then having to hypnotize everybody to make them forget it was a weather balloon, it was marsh gas. Because all those people at the end who weren't supposed to know about the spaceship was like, there's a spaceship floating here with the floating stairs and everything, and everybody's seen it, and bleep, 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 it was marsh gas, it was a weather balloon. You just see the guys walking up with black suits.
But who cares? It's a different world line, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So, yeah. NASA security fail. But that's okay because they did that the entire movie.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, in this movie, if you look at all hard, like myself and Space Robert do, you will notice how hard NASA security failed over and over again, which is probably why they don't actually exist.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, from a writer's perspective, this movie had some serious weak points. From a science perspective, from a speculative science perspective, I should say. It was really quite interesting, and that's the thing that grabbed me when I was 17. So even though there was the beginning was a bit slow, and some of the bait and switch was really obvious and overused, the whole concept of the spaceship and what happened was interesting. Really, they didn't explain why he was going to be vaporized if he went back in time, considering that, he's a biological organism that's designed to live on, a planet which has a certain amount of gravity and a certain pressure of atmosphere, so forth and so on. And all those other biological organisms that were in the ship were the same in that they were suited to their environments, and it could have been that different from his because they were all sitting in the same spaceship. I mean, there might have been microgravity fields adjusting for their preferences, but if there wasn't, then they were all pretty much the same sort of resilience of biological organisms. So I can't understand why his brain was going to vaporize, or his body was going to vaporize, and none of the others were. But that was completely unexplained. But from a science perspective, it held a lot of water and it got a lot of interest. And I do agree with Robert that it, as a sci-fi movie designed for younger people, produced by Disney, it had a positive effect in that, it got as I'm N equals 1, but Robert is another example where it interested us in science. And I'm a scientist now, I'm a biologist, so I don't know that this movie is directly responsible for that, but it all adds up. So yeah, I think this movie has some quite good qualities. I don't know how well it would mesh with today's youth, in that all the computers are old and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't really look like the computers of today or how things would work today. So there's a little bit of retro in it that young people might find a little bit disassociative. But in general, I think it's a good movie in as much as it interests people in science fiction and science, and certainly did that for me, and sounds like it did that for Robert. Gio saw it today, so like he wasn't influenced as a young person, but he said he liked it, so it couldn't have been that negative for him. But yeah, I mean, given its faults, it's still a good movie, still worth a watch with your kids. You can explain to them about, oh yeah, back in the day, TVs looked like that. They weren't flat screens, and people did print stuff out because it wasn't easy to walk around with a phone or an iPad and have it all digital all the time.
Kids played outside. There was no internet.
Yeah, people went outside and fell in culverts and got taken away by spaceships. That happened once or twice a week. Well, there's a lot of planets out there, a lot of aliens. But yeah, I mean, you can sit there and talk, reminisce about the past with your kid if you know this movie well, or if you don't, give it a watch with your kids, or if you're a young person, give it a watch and discuss it with your friends and see what you think. And if you watch it for nothing else, check out the Puck Marine. He's cute.
Yeah, yes, I want that toy. Awesome. Okay, so I guess this concludes, and we can move on to the next segment. Anything else anybody want to add? I'm good now. Okay. I've turned the alien spaceship into the Borg, and I've bagged NASA security to the ends of the Earth and back, so I'm feeling pretty good now. Okay, so let's go into our next segment.
Science and sci-fi.
Okay.
So there's this guy named Space Robert, right? And he claimed that this movie was light on, but he's wrong. And you're about to find out why he's wrong.
Okay.
There's a lot of science in this thing.
Go ahead.
I mean, really, come on. There's heaps of science. I mean, there's NASA security. How could there not be science?
I think I wanna get those name tags.
Oh dear. If ever I'm in something like Ocean's 11 and I've got to break into a casino, I want NASA security to be their security because make it so much easier.
What about a NASA badge that says NASA security? Ooh.
Oh yeah, we could make those. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of scientific theories and scientific realities and theorems that have been touched on in this movie. The ones that I wanted to sort of bring out, and I keep thinking of new ones as I'm working my way through these ideas. But the obvious one, and I mean it's sort of like the main sort of drama thrust of the movie is time dilation. So time dilation is basically the faster you travel through space, the slower you travel through time, because space-time is connected. And the more you do one, the less you do the other, basically. So this is another way of saying that you can never travel faster than the speed of light, as a clock would stop altogether. And time would stop moving, so you'd stop doing anything. Interesting idea. That actually comes from the STEM Fellowship. So it's not a fly-by-night organization who made that statement. But basically, I'm not a physicist, so I'm probably going to butcher this. I apologize.
Hey, I'm not a scientist at all, so yeah, be my guest.
I don't think that makes much of a difference. Really, when it comes to physics, for me anyway. But yeah, so different parts of the universe, time runs differently due to gravitational forces, like around black holes. This is all theory, by the way, because we haven't been there. But this is what is expected, and until we get a probe there and actually check it out, it will be interesting. But I mean, they've done experiments on the International Space Station where there was twins, and they sent one twin up to the International Space Station, the other one stayed on Earth. Now, obviously, the further you are away from your point of rotation, the faster you are moving, because you have to. So a person standing on the surface of the Earth is moving slower than a person in a space station, because the space station is higher. It's further away from the point of origin of movement, so they have to move faster. This is the basis of centrifugal force. So one twin was in the space station, one twin was down on the planet. Now, I can't remember when the twin from the space station came back, how they did the measurement, but they did actually work out that the one on the planet was slightly older than the one in the space station, because he was moving faster, so time was moving slightly slower for him. So this is an actual experiment that they've done. I don't have the reference in front of me. I just remembered that as I was speaking. So I don't have anything to back myself up on that one, but I do remember hearing that. So, but we can do a bit of research on that. It might actually be a good talking point for one of our articles. I might have to look that up and write something up about it. But yeah, so basically, the faster you're moving, the slower you travel through time. So when the boy was traveling at 2 million times the speed of light to get over to the planet, was it Farlan?
Fallon. Yeah. I'm gonna.
Yeah. Anyway, the aliens' planet, which was 560 light years away, They got there in 2.2 hours relative time. So 2.2 hours to get there, however long they spent messing with his head, because that's what aliens do. Well, they're either messing with something. Some of them mess with the other end. But they spent time messing with his head. Then they brought him back. So there'd be another 2.2 hours to get back here. So, probably, a day or so had passed. Phelan, yes. A short period of time basically had passed, a day or so. But on Earth, 8 years had passed because he was traveling faster than the speed of light, so time was going much slower for him. Theoretically, it should have stopped or gone backwards because he was going faster than the speed of light. But obviously, the way you travel faster than the speed of light would have an impact on that. So, but basically, in this idea of what happened to David, he ended up not aging, whereas 8 years had passed on Earth. So that is a physical law. I'm not sure if it was covered by Einstein. I'm not sure where that one exactly comes from off the top of my head, not being a physicist. But you can look up time dilation on Wikipedia or the STEM Fellowship, and delve into how that might work. So space.com is talking about Einstein's theory of special relativity. So it's an Einsteinian. It's based off one of his calculations. So there you go. I scrolled down far enough to actually read that. But yeah, I found that one really interesting. But of course, if you're skipping outside of our reality, like going into a subspace or some other method of achieving a speed faster than the speed of light, because in our physical reality, you shouldn't be able to go faster than that unless you're affecting the physical reality in some awesome way that allows you to do that. So if you can step outside of that time dilation or time freezing at the speed of light, then you might have a way around that. But obviously, according to this story, he was affected by it.
Cool. Yeah, I always find that really fascinating. And you brought on a concept that makes a lot of sense to me, and is the fact that if you go fast enough, the faster you go, the slower time passes, and you reach the time where time stops. So obviously, if time stops, you can't move forward. So I find that really fascinating. I don't think I ever seen traveling from that perspective before.
But would that mean that time stops for light? Because it's traveling at the speed of light.
Yeah.
I'd have to research it.
Yeah, and it's really I'd be looking forward to the article. So whenever you do, if you decide to do it, send it to me and I'll publish it on our website. So there's a couple of things that I kind of found out. The spaceship in this film was based on the NASA spacecrafts called X-24B. And I don't have an image, but let me look it up real quick, and I could probably screen share. But it's I can see how, especially when it actually transformed, I can see how that would become let me go ahead and screen share. 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and screen share that real quick. You guys can see. Sorry, I have 2 monitors and I have to find my mouse. Okay, here we go. So, can you see it? Can you see the similarities? It's not much, but you can see how that would be the inspiration.
Mm.
Especially that, you know. So yeah, that I found that was actually the inspiration for.
So you're talking about when the ship is in what did he call it?
When he's moving really fast.
Yeah. Class 1 maneuver mode.
Yes. Yes.
I think was how it was referenced. There was sort of piggybacking off that idea of changing the shape of the ship so that it could travel faster through a thicker atmosphere. Basically, I would say, hello, Concorde.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we don't see the Concorde flying around anymore, but the Concorde was well known as a plane that was, you know, in civil service that actually changed its shape based on its speed to improve performance. So the nose was bent down when it was at slow speeds, and at high speeds, the nose would move up to change the aerodynamic profile and allow it to travel faster with less drag.
Mm.
But then it would maneuver better with the nose down for takeoffs and landings. And you know, that is the same sort of idea, obviously not with mimetic metal, which can transform, but you know, a mechanical system where it's able to change its shape. And you know, that the Concorde was late 60s, I think.
Oh yeah.
When they were developing it. So I mean, yeah, the idea is not new. But obviously the way it was used in this movie was somewhat new. You know, a few years later we got Terminator 1000, which we took it to a whole nother level. But yeah, none of these ideas exist in a bubble. All of these sort of things are permeating through science and engineering and science fiction, and pop up again and again and again in different ways, shapes and forms. But it's very interesting. I think there's also a few military aircraft in the late 60s and through the 70s that actually had noses that adjusted, like, you know, the high speed reconnaissance aircraft. I think there was one of those that did the same sort of thing as the Concorde.
Yeah, I think those. Yeah, I can't. The only one that kind of brings back to memory is, but then again, that's not an experimental. The SR-71, but it didn't also. I don't think it changed shape though, but it was not experimental. That ended up being in full use. But yeah, I know which ones you're talking about. The other ones that fully experimental. But you know, you have a good point when it comes to the science and the concepts that, like, one example that I could bring up. It's, if you think about it, the example of Max. Max seems to be an artificial intelligence technology. But this movie was in 1986, right? Artificial intelligence was in its early stages.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for us now watching this movie, you see this and it's like, oh yeah, I can see it. It's a possibility. I can see how that can be a thing. But remember, this was 1986. Seeing this as an artificial intelligent being in 86, it's mind-blowing. Because it's not something, I mean, think about this. It was in early stages of development. So when everything, I mean, now that we have the internet and information flows freely, you have a bigger chance, especially if you're looking for it, to find, stuff that is, technologies are in early development. But if you think about 1986, you had to go to a library and hope that they had a scientific journal section.
And hope that they had the journal you're after.
Exactly. And even if they do, most likely will be microfiche, but you have to spend the whole day looking through microfiche until you find. And for all of you who don't know or not familiar with microfiche, they're basically film. They actually photograph documents in a very tiny little. Well, the film is not tiny. It was probably like a 2x3. But if you look at a 2x3 and imagine having books on a 2x3 piece of film, you imagine it would be really tiny. So you put it in this machine. It has a big, I want to say loop with light coming in on a white light on the bottom, and you kind of like move around with your hands until you find the page that you're looking for.
Well, it was kind of, these people probably don't know overhead projectors, but overhead projectors were the precursor to data projectors.
Mm-hmm.
It's an analog version. But microfiche had a magnifier in it. So rather than having things at a readable size in front of you and then project it up onto a screen and make it bigger, you'd have things that were tiny, like, and they used to store newspapers in microfiche as well.
Yes,
so if
I
you ever had to
remember
look up an old newspaper, you'd have to go to the microfiche to do it. But you'd have like a sheet of film like this, but each page of the newspaper would be like this big, and you'd use this magnifier to run across, and you could read pages of old newspapers from this microfiche that were tiny little things, but would then be magnified up. And this is the way that you compress the storage. This is back before I remember the ones where you had to look into an eyepiece, but yeah, there were screen varieties as well.
Yeah, the one that I got to use, I know which ones you're talking about. I never got a chance to use those. The ones that I got to use were more like, let me see, it would be kind of similar to this, where you kind of see it projected on a screen. And then this little tiny 2x3, I think it was a 2x3. You would put it on this machine, and it would actually. I think this is how they would look like.
But anybody who went to school after 2000 never would have seen this because it was all digitized.
Exactly.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with digital. Digital's awesome because you can store so much digitally compared to physical storage, even compressed physical storage like that. But there was all these other technologies that we used because digital storage wasn't a thing. I mean, I never actually got to use it. Like you said, you never actually got to use the microfiche with the lenses. But when I was in high school, they wheeled out these boxes of punch cards, which was how you used to put information into computers before keyboards and mice and screens. You used to feed punch cards into the computer, which gave it the information in ones and zeros, and then it would do the calculation and it would spit out the result, either ticker tape or punch card or something like that. And then you'd have to work out what it meant from that. There was no direct, well, I can just see it on the screen in English lettering and numbers so I can understand it immediately. There was all these conversions you had to do to get it to what the computer could understand and then get it back to what you can understand. So it's come a long way. I mean, usability has come a huge way compared to originally. I mean, creating a computer originally was a very hard thing, and they were very large. The first computer in my hometown of Albury took up an entire room, and it was actually at a car dealership.
Wow.
Would you believe that? A car dealership.
Wow.
They had my father was an electrical contractor, and he helped install it. And he said it took up the entire bloody room. It was huge.
So yeah, going back to what I was saying, artificial intelligence. I give props to this movie for thinking ahead. And again, this is what we love about the device that it is, science fiction storytelling. Because you wonder if, obviously the people who actually made this movie had more time and money to do research and find out, this is a technology. And I'm not saying that this is what was done. All I'm saying is they had the possibility to research this better than an average person and come up and say, okay, maybe we can use this as a plot device in the science fiction story that we're telling. What we see in the film, it's definitely what would science fiction is, complete science fiction at the time. But now today, we things like Bard and Chat GPT being around, we could see it more of a reality, although we're still not there. You could definitely see how this could become a reality soon, just because of the way things are, the way it is. But it's back in '86 when we didn't have internet in there either. So I mean, it's hard to visualize, and this is the reason why I'm pointing it out, because it's hard to visualize, because for most people nowadays, it's hard to think of a time where there was no internet. There was hard to think of a time where the way of entertainment, the way of people having fun, would be to get out of the house and get together with other people. As far as kids, getting together with the kids in the neighborhood and have fun. And the only thing that you had to do was making sure that you come home before it gets dark.
Yep. When the street lights come on, you go home.
Exactly. And this is sadly a concept that unless you come from that time, you will just not grasp. You could not possibly understand. So having that in context, seeing artificial intelligence in this movie, the way that we see it, it's impressive. So anything that you would like to add for this segment?
I mean, you've got a whole bunch of interesting points here. The film's use of morphing effects was groundbreaking at the time, and the technology used to create those effects has continued to advance in the decades since the film's release. This is just a point I'm reading out that Robert's put in there. As I mentioned in the Patreon-only pre-recording session, this movie and its effects reminds me a lot of another movie around that time called Last Starfighter,
Yes.
which was basically the first science fiction movie with full digital effects for the space scenes. And it did look very sort of, Battlezone 2 kind of look, with the very sort of hard surfaces with no shading or anything like that. And of course, that was as good as they could do back in those days. And of course, this was quite impressive for the time. The ship having, reflections from the environment on the silvered surface and things like that was quite a new thing in special effects. And of course, Terminator 2, which had those amazing scenes of the T-1000 walking out of the fire, reflecting all the fire and everything, and then morphing back into the guy. Those effects are still 5 years away from when this movie came out. So, 5 years in the special effects industry is a long time. Yes. The way these sorts of things develop. So I mean, this was a groundbreaker in as much as what they were doing with the special effects. So I think it's worth mentioning here. Not so much in the science, but in the making of the science fiction, in the special effects. So it is a form of science in that it was computer science behind the science fiction. So sort of weasel its way in there, as it were.
Awesome. Yeah, this movie had a lot of science, and this is, I guess, one of the things that I really like about the film. The amount of science. There has been a lot of things that we probably have not covered, because it's just, it had that much. I invite you guys over to talk to us. Join on our Discord, and let's discuss. I want to hear your answer to most of the questions that we have asked here. Like, one of the ones that I find very interesting, as you can hear me from almost every episode, is I like to hear from you guys and see, like, how old were you and what was your first thoughts on this movie? I always find that question very fascinating, because to me it's a point of perspective. I really love to hear the different perspectives on first impressions, based on, how old were you when that thing, that sci-fi story that you got to watch. So,
and if you're a chronic overthinker like the two guys, and you have some sort of weird theory about something to do with this movie, jump on the Discord and let us know, because we love to hear weird theories.
Oh yeah.
as long as it holds water, as long as it's internally consistent with the story, go for it. Tell us your weirdest ideas. We'd love to hear them.
Definitely. And just as you heard us before, if you like to be in that missing part of the conversation that we have on our pre-show, please become a Patreon and help our show. If you like to help the show, I know that what you can do the most to help us, and not being in a monetary way, would be to share our show, subscribe, and to our YouTube channel, subscribe to your pod provider, and share the love with your friends, or any people that you know that love sci-fi as much as you do, which we like to think that is as much as we do if you like to listen to our show. But if you want to do a little bit more of that, you can join on our Patreon, and you would have direct access to our Discord, and you also have our pre-show that are not being published anywhere. It's only for our Patreons. If you want to do just a momentary thing, you can join over at Buy Me a Coffee, and you can just help us in that way as well. And again, I just want to make sure that you guys know we will publish an article every Sunday morning Eastern time on our website, sciencefictionremnant.com. And if you want to be in the know when the article releases, you can go to the website, scroll a little bit down to the right, and you'll see a subscribe to our newsletter form. You just go ahead and put in your email there and subscribe, and you will get an email every Sunday letting you know that the article is out, with a little bit of context as to what the article will be about. Again, we really appreciate all of your support. I don't get tired of saying, we are not who we are if it wasn't for you guys. Thank you so much, not only for the engagement, your passion, you're coming in week after week to listen to us, and for all of you who are actually subscribed to our YouTube, which, by the way, at the time of recording, we are at 128 subscriber. So I really appreciate you subscribing to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you guys being with us every week, listening to our show. Just remember, engage with us and let us know if you like a show, if you do not like a show, if you have any ideas of what should we cover. We are all ears. And also do remember that if you want to kind of be in the show and not be in the show at a time, you can actually call our hotline. The number is 1-305-563-6334, and we will actually play your message on future episodes, and we will have our comments on that. So it's kind of like having a conversation. So just make sure and call, leave your message for any of the hosts, leave a message for any of the episodes that we have recorded in the past, or if you have any ideas for future episodes. And if you have called in the past and you have given your ideas and you haven't seen your show yet, don't worry. They are in our Trello board, and we will eventually get to them. So we really appreciate any engagement, and thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your support. Okay, so thank you so much, and I hope to see you guys on our future episodes. Bye.
All right, catch you later, Navigator.